as we age, the probability that we need long-term care increases over time. Similarly, the fear that long-term care could run out the resources that we've saved for retirement and for the end of life also tends to increase. However, we don't always need to be afraid of that, as sometimes there are ways that we can plan for long-term care that can decrease that fear.
Today we get to talk long-term care, and it's nice that there are more and more studies, statistics that are being done on this topic, maybe to the point of even being humorous. On some level, we saw 100 must-know statistics about long-term care, 2023 edition from Morningstar. For most of us, there's not any field that we need to know 100 different statistics on. So we're going to try to condense that, give our own take on some of those, and bring in some other data for our time together today. But the big picture is people are living longer, we have better medical technology, and so we're able to do some wonderful things in that regard. But also, as that happens, we also have people that are in long-term care and needing those services for longer periods of time as well. For our clients in particular, we serve people that by and large have saved better for retirement, who are better educated. And in both of those arenas, they tend to live longer, also need more long-term care services. So it is really an acute need for a lot of our clients to be able to at least do the planning process. And so we'll dive in there. So first, how do we even define long-term care? Like what would be the trigger that would say, hey, this is actually long-term care as a need?
Yeah, so long-term care is defined as being unable to complete 2 of 6 activities of daily living. And those can include getting in and out of bed, walking across the room, dressing, bathing, showering, eating, and using the toilet. So just basic daily living activities. So long-term care is defined as needing assistance with at least 2 of those.
Or cognitive impairment, right?
Or cognitive impairment.
We might be able to do all of those, but if we have dementia or Alzheimer's, then that is an immediate trigger.
Absolutely. And the other facet with long-term care is we need to separate long-term care as a just general need out from nursing home or assisted living facility. Because you can have a long-term care need and not being able to bathe or eat, but you can still be in your home. So there's still a physical need, but it's not in a facility.
So I guess we've got a couple of things there, nuance as well, because sometimes we have a family member or a friend that's providing some of those needs. There's still a need, still in the home, but we're not paying for those.
Right.
Whereas sometimes we'll have a need in the home that we're paying for.
Right.
And then sometimes we need to go to a facility where there's specialized folks that can help us around the clock.
Yeah, so triaging really what is that need is really important. So we're going to go through some of these statistics. And the first couple, it's all about people that are turning or have turned the age of 65.
Okay.
So it's a point in time statistic. And so we look and we say 70% of people turning 65 will develop a severe long-term care need at some point in their life. Again, if we triage this, that doesn't mean that 70% of people are going to go into a nursing home.
Right.
Or need memory care. It
Right.
means that they will need care at some point in their life. 48% of people turning 65 will need some sort of paid long-term care services. Again, some of these statistics, it's a little bit less for people with a college degree, but by and large, people will need some sort of care. About half of people will need paid care. And then 24% of people turning 65 will need more than 2 years of paid care. And only 15% of people turning 65 will actually need nursing home care. So we see this broad swath.
So 15% of people will need more than 2 years of nursing home
Correct.
care. Right?
Yeah. So we see this broad swath where we can be really debilitating to say, I've got a 70% chance if I turn 65 that I'll need long-term care, and we immediately think nursing home. But really, it's only 15% that need nursing home for 2 years. And that's where costs really start to pile up. So this is where we say it's really critical to know this information, because if we know the information, we can start peeling back the layers and see, okay, what is the actual need that I may or may not have?
One of the interesting elements that we see here too, it's not the same across men and women. Women usually live longer, statistically, if we look, and if they live longer and they don't have maybe as many men surviving to be able to care for them, then that need is elevated. So we see that in the statistics a typical need for 3.7 years for women versus 2.2 years for men. So that's another one of those factors that we can plan for if we've got some guidance and we can look ahead and see, okay, what might likely happen, particularly if we have maybe a couple where the wife is 3, 4, 5 years younger. Then there's an even elevated statistical likelihood that person might need more care down the road.
And Spencer, one of the other pieces you mentioned earlier was this idea of mental capacity. Roughly half of people in nursing homes have some form of Alzheimer's disease or a dementia-related disorder. And so we know that memory care is becoming more and more prevalent. But as you look at memory care over time, the longer we live, the more likely we are to develop some sort of memory care need. However, because it's progressive, if you've got family members that can care for you, a spouse, a loved one, then you may be able to push off that need for a memory care unit for longer in time. If you've got children that are close, then maybe they can help out with that memory care need. But we know with many people that have walked through this, family members of ours, at some point it just gets so difficult to care for that loved one that maybe a nursing home is the right fit.
Right. Well, and we even see that for those who have a loved one that's caring for them, their pace of progression oftentimes is less. And if they're able to stay in that environment that they know and they trust, rather than have some kind of an event where they, are seeing new people every day that are caring for them. So a lot of different factors that come in together on that particular issue.
So let's switch over and we've talked about the need. Let's talk about the actual cost of long-term care. So we're going to pull out some information for Knox County, where we live. And this comes from a company called Genworth. And what they're going to do is they're going to look at some of the different places of what is the cost. And we'll put a link to where we found this data in the show notes. So you can go and look, what does long-term care look like in your area? But the reality is costs vary. And some people think that Medicare is going to cover it. Medicare is health insurance. We can also look to Medicaid to say it will cover it, but there's a lot of factors to becoming Medicaid eligible. You have to be incredibly needy. And so there's a lot of pieces at play. So we're just going to look primarily at what is the cost of long-term care without considering Medicare, without considering insurance, without considering Medicaid. And so in Knoxville, there's obviously different levels of care. If you've got in-home care, that costs about $60,000 a year. And so that means you have a person coming into your home for a large amount of time and providing care, maybe not around the clock, but for a substantial amount of time.
And that average is an interesting one because it could be anything from 1 hour a week that the cost would be a few $1,000s a year, all the way up to 24/7, 365 coverage, which could be $150,000 a year. So 60 right in the middle there. Take it for what it's worth. That might average something like 3.5 days a week. People come in, provide some care, but that's only going to be one particular example of in-home care.
Yeah, and that kind of is true across a lot of these. And so we think about adult daycare. You just need help during the day. Maybe it is you're caring for a single parent and you have to go to work so that you can cover the cost of that care. But when you get back from work, you can continue to care for your loved one. It costs about $18,000 a year, again, here in Knoxville. An assisted living facility where you moved a loved one in, about $46,000. If you go to a nursing home, you have a semi-private room, maybe you have a roommate, about $86,000, and then a private room nursing home is about $91,000. Again, those costs can go up substantially and they may be able to come down, but that's the average here in Knoxville.
So can you unpack a little bit, what's the difference between assisted living facility and then say that nursing home? There's a big gap there, about 2x, in terms of cost. What's the difference?
Well, I think primarily it's because when you have nursing care, you have to have some sort of a hospitalization element there. And so it may be an elevated level of care that you are seeing nurses more frequently. Whereas assisted living, you're still able to complete activities of daily living, but you may just be in a facility where there's other people that are elderly, or maybe it's a retirement community type thing where there's just more needs provided for, but there's not that elevated level of nursing care that you have to see in those nursing homes.
So in assisted living, we basically have all of the needs of the facility taken care of. You're not having to mow the lawn or, vacuum the carpet if you don't want to. You have your food provided for. So a lot of different services there that take away some of the stress. Yeah. But at the same time, we're not having a nurse check on us 4 times a day.
Yeah. So going off of that, Spencer, really when we think about long-term care needs, it's about triaging. Mm-hmm. And this is where it comes to, okay, do you need that 24/7 nursing care? Have you been completely unable to do some of those activities of daily living for months on end? Mm-hmm. And the care that your loved ones can give, or the care that an assisted living facility can provide, just don't cover it anymore. But that isn't always the case on the front end. And so really, when we think about long-term care, we really need to triage the need, triage the cost, and then figure out, okay, what is the best path forward? And so obviously we know that independence is a major desire for a lot of people, but there really needs to be an awareness that this could be a cost that is incurred. This could be a need that's incurred. And I think when we embrace that reality, it's easier to move forward with planning for, okay, I want to be able to make sure that if I want to stay independent, here are maybe some of the factors that allow me to stay independent. If I can't do these, then it's time to consider long-term care or an assisted living facility. But really we think about, okay, what are those support systems that we have? So you want to run us through what are some of the support systems that we can sometimes rely on, but not always?
Well, some of the support systems, obviously, if we have a close community, and whether that be family or friends, then that is that first line of defense. If we need someone at least checking in on a client every day or a couple of times a day, that's one area. Then you add people coming actually over to the home to provide some services. So if there are folks who are either family or friends that can provide that, that's wonderful. Sometimes there comes a point, though, where we need to have some outside help too, because maybe family and friends can help with cooking and cleaning and helping with medication, but can't help with, say, bathing or with some other areas of nursing, skilled nursing that might be important. So we need to really create that plan, and as you talked about, incorporate the preferences of the client, because there may be a lack of understanding of some of those options. For instance, sometimes we'll have clients that really think that they want to stay at home as long as they can. But what they realize is that there are assisted living facilities out there that are really, really well run, and they provide, all of the food that a client might need. Prepared meals that taste good, and activities that are actually fun with people that are in their age range. All kinds of different things that actually from a social environment can be very attractive. We've had clients that said, I really didn't understand the range of options that I had there, but this gives me actually a community of people that I can see and support systems that are built in there. That's not right for everyone, but for a lot more people, I think, particularly as they see that they need more people checking in with them and they need some kind of light services, that can be a great option at a cost that's not all that significant compared to maybe what it would cost to keep up a home and do their own meals and do all those kinds of things.
Right. Well, because if you come back and say the average cost for assisted living is $46,000 a year in Knoxville, roughly $4,000 a month, that's a fairly conservative cost that a lot of clients can bear if that's a desire that they have. If the home has gotten too big to manage, if they just are ready to move into a different season of life, $4,000 a month isn't very punitive when you think about it can cover most of your daily expenses.
And there's also other things that are built in there too. So we have clients that they're able to go out to the store, they're able to do other activities that are built in, with bus services and other things with those facilities. So it's not you're just going to that facility and never leaving. There are other options, there too.
Right. So this is where we really come back, and we say this all the time. We say it very frequently. It's really important to make a plan. It's important to have goals. And so when we think about long-term care, yes, we want clients to feel the freedom to live independently as long as possible. However, while you have cognitive function, while you have the ability to make these hard choices, like we talked about with estate planning a couple months ago, the reality is it's important to make the plan while you are in the right state of mind to make the plan.
And to bring other people in to have those discussions,
yeah.
Be that a son or daughter or nephew or niece or friends, loved ones, so that you can all be on the same page, because you may find that they have a greater capacity to be able to help and a greater willingness to help, or you may find that they're in a season of life that you didn't anticipate that they've got some other responsibilities. It's going to make it more difficult. But if you can surface that conversation and go ahead and put together a path, then that gives you a much better likelihood of being in an environment that you really want to be.
So we'll just surface some of those questions that you could ask and maybe even put down on paper and just say, okay, these are the things, and maybe review them every once in a while with loved ones. But what aspects of care are most important to you? Is it important that you remain at home? Would you prefer to move to an assisted living facility and be around other people? Not all facilities are created equal. So maybe even just going and doing some research, visiting a facility, seeing if, okay, maybe this isn't as bad, like you were saying, as I had initially thought. Maybe what health markers or mobility constraints would make you consider a move? Are you no longer able to go up and down stairs? Things like that. Consider what are those markers, again, while you're healthy, both of mind and body, to say, okay, this is when it really needs to be considered. Would you be open to moving closer to family or even living with family? And then who are those people that you know that would want to help? How long do you think, have conversations with them? How long would they be willing to help? And then who can you call in case of an emergency? It's really important, again, if you ask these questions and then invite family and friends into it, then at least you've got a plan and say, okay, when these things happen, I'm at least ready to take the next step. And it's not, we have an emergency, I don't know what mom or dad or client wanted. And so we're left kind of in the dark.
Long-term care is particularly challenging because we come face to face with our mortality. If you have any questions, we'd be delighted to talk with you about long-term care, about that planning process going forward. We'll have a couple of more episodes in this field, so stay tuned for those. And in the meantime, I hope you have a great week.
If you like these financial planning videos, please share with a friend. And if you have questions, go to our website at SeriousRetirement.com. This content was provided by Retirement Planning Services. We are located in Knoxville, Tennessee. You can visit our website at SeriousRetirement.com. The information in this recording is intended for general educational and informational purposes only and should not be construed as investment advisory, financial planning, legal, tax, or other professional advice based on your specific situation. Please consult with your professional advisor before taking any action based on its contents. Advisory services offered through Retirement Planning Services, LLC.